We had a wonderful young minister and his wife, but she had 5 children.
Wow.
And so, she was pretty well homebound. But I loved her just from perspective, distance, and I thought, I'd run over to Wilma Jean's, what was her name, and her house was always a disaster. There was laundry on the couch. There was, dishes in the sink, and but she was so kind and sweet, and she would take time to sit down with me. And probably a teenager is going to ask somebody other than their mother the hard things of life.
Yes.
And so, if you really can encourage your kids to have that person, it's a godsend.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she was that to me. I would tell her stuff I would have never told my mother.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
All right. We are back. We are back in the studio. We are so excited to bring you another episode of the Sisterhood of Motherhood season. Season 2 of the Well Grounded podcast.
Yes, we are so excited.
I am Leigh Ann.
And I am Diane.
And we are 2 lifelong friends sharing God's wisdom, hopefully, with you over coffee and conversation.
Yes.
And we just want to encourage you today with the concept of this whole thing, which is moms are all walking a similar road together, even if you're in different seasons. There's so much commonality.
Ages and stages of motherhood, yes.
There's so much commonality in that. So we are just so glad to have you back, and we have a great guest today that we are going to be introducing you to, and she has a special... the thing we've been preaching about.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want to give it away.
I know. We don't want to give it away. Yes.
But this is a pretty special guest. So
it is. We're very
really
excited about it.
Yes, but before we get into our interview.
Yes, we're going to go into our latte moment. And today's latte moment, well, we're in the month of March.
Cheers.
So I thought we should do something that gives an ode to all of the Irish out there. And this is called a Dublin Fog Irish breakfast tea. Latte. So let's say that again. A Dublin Fog Irish breakfast tea latte. So it is a tea instead of a coffee. And the recipe is going to be in our show notes.
Let's see if it lives up to its name.
Yes. It smells minty.
Okay,
good.
can I ask something?
Sure.
Is the frothy top the fog? Is that where they get those names?
I think it is.
Because this is not our first fog on this show.
Yes.
So, okay.
And
it's really good. It's really good.
I actually made this, so I feel like I have a little handle on it. But the recipe will be in our show notes. It's very simple. It's just tea. You can put whatever sugar you want in it. So I used just regular natural sugar. You can use honey. And I used a little vanilla. I used mint tea as well, so it's got a little mint flavor.
So good.
And then you do the froth on top. So pretty simple, pretty fun,
but the frothing takes it to the next level.
Yes.
I'm telling you, we need to do a giveaway with the little frothing.
We do.
That's coming. That's coming. Making it.
That might be. You give us a new coffee recipe, and we might put you in a drawing for a frother.
We're doing that.
We're doing that.
Yes, we're doing that.
That'll be a lot of fun.
You get
you can always find us. Remember on Instagram at Well Grounded Podcast, and that's where you're going to find the recipe and the things like that as well. Yes. So you can always find that.
So worth a follow. Yes. The fun behind the scenes and all of those things.
But everything.
The fog.
Yes. So enjoy that latte moment.
Yes.
So we are here today with a very special guest, someone that I have known for so many years. My oldest is 24 years old. So I would say that I've known our friend here at the table for almost 24 years because we met right around, Emma might have been maybe 1 when we started together. So our journey came upon each other at church, met her through different church groups, but we started in a group called MOPS, which was Mothers of Preschoolers. I actually coordinated the MOPS group for 14 years, and which now is 10 years ago, so that makes me feel a little crazy old.
We were talking about
because I stopped coordinating when my youngest was 5, so he's 15, so that tells you it's been 10 years. But we've shared a lot of life together, and we just want to say a big welcome to Ruth Montana.
Thank you.
Yes.
So glad. Okay, can I just, before we start, I have to tell our wonderful audience that for years of our friendship, I hadn't met you, but I was getting this like hand-me-down advice and wisdom.
Oh.
Well, let me tell you what Ruth told me about this. Let me tell you, Ruth. And I was like, she sounds wonderful. So,
Yeah.
But I know from a fellow mom in the same stage that you were in that Ruth has poured into you, invested into you as a mom, and was there for you.
Yeah.
What we call the Ask a Mom hotline when you need to call and ask a question.
Yes.
And just to have that encouragement from somebody who's in the next season ahead. So we're so grateful to
So
have
our
you
theme,
here.
if maybe we didn't even say what our theme was today,
I know,
but
what
our
is the
theme
theme?
is actually the value of mentorship
Yes.
and how beautiful it is in life to have those people that can pour into you and that you in turn can pour into others. And so today that's what we're going to be talking about is that value of mentorship. And so that's why Ruth is here. So welcome. And
you.
we'd love to just, have you introduce yourself and a little bit of your story.
Okay, well, my story's long because I'm old now.
You're wise. Let's not say
Precious,
old,
precious.
wise, right?
I'm a mom first. Well, actually, probably a wife would sound better, wouldn't it? Of 3 boys. Figured by the third one, I could have a whole football team, so this is probably sufficient. I'll wait for daughter-in-laws, which I have 3 beautiful daughter-in-laws, 10 grandkids, and 4 great-grandchildren.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So
Yeah.
it's like, the generation to the generation to the generation.
Yes.
And I guess that probably the biggest thing that I think about when I think about mentoring is that I had no idea what I'm doing. Like you think, am I mentoring someone,
True.
But in reality, I think we are all sort of mentors, even when we aren't aware of it.
Yeah.
So, the first people I mentored obviously were my kids.
Yeah. True.
So,
Right.
with a husband that supported and was always there. I was raised in a Christian home. He was not. And so my father was responsible for my husband's accepting the Lord.
So he was a mentor to your husband. So, that's
You led him
lovely.
to the Lord?
Yes, he did. He worked with my dad. In fact, our relationship is kind of crazy because he was around all the time. And he was just part of the family in terms of, I didn't ever think I'd marry him. But
and how many years have you been married when you say that?
59 years.
59. Yes.
That's
So
great.
he was like, Dad was concerned that he would marry one of these girls. I have 3 sisters. So I happened to be the one.
Oh, wow. You got to pick that straw.
Your dad said, I need to lead him to the Lord because he might end up with one of my daughters.
I guess that might have been true. I never asked
You
him that.
needed to get him ready for.
Except that I know my father was a mentor to my husband. So that's kind of like, you don't think about it that way.
Sure.
Right.
But when you try to think about what is mentoring, you realize that you've had an awful lot of it in your life story. And maybe don't even realize it.
And don't even realize it. I love that.
Do you think when you were mentoring Diane that you were consciously thinking of that? You were just answering her questions because she definitely thought of you as someone mentoring her, but you were just living your life.
Right,
and just
right.
that's a neat thing to think about is if we're just pursuing the Lord and loving our husbands and our children and following, if someone comes along and says, hey, what would you do in this situation? Or how can you help me? That it's just a natural overflow.
response. Yeah. And actually, when you all said, that you wanted me to talk about mentoring, I'm thinking, I don't even know what that really is. It's like,
Literally the most influential person in Diane's life. And she's like, was I your mentor?
So I'm trying to think,
precious.
who are the mentors that I've had?
Okay.
And I didn't even know that they were really put in that category. It's like, you think about, you have mentors in work relationships. That's where you think about it probably is the word mostly. It's like, when I went into the real estate business, I had some good mentors. That
taught you and things.
Taught me. My husband has been a teacher for years and years and years, and he mentored a ton of kids. But you don't necessarily think about it at least I didn't, in terms of personal Christian relationships.
Right.
But you're doing it
Well, remember with MOPS, their goal was called lifestyle evangelism, and it was about living your life and living your life for Christ. And so by doing that, you would show others how to be a Christian.
Correct.
And around the table, around a lunch date, around a playground, wherever it was that you were living through that and things. And that's one reason why we both love that ministry so much.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I remember being asked to be a mentor mom, and even then I'm like, what's a mentor mom? I don't know. I'll be that, I guess. It's because I'm older than these kids,
You've been there and done that. A lot of times you think of a mentor as someone that's kind of ahead of you maybe in a stage of life. And so you guys that we had as mentor moms were that next stage ahead. You kind of, your kids were already launched, and things that you can give us that you can do it mentality.
And the perspective, I think that's so valuable. And one of the reasons we started this was not only that we were looking at being close. We're not either of us quite there, but we're really close to that empty nest season, they call it, with the all grown kids. We have some grown and some still at home. But we were looking at how natural we feel like that was in other generations and how we've kind of lost that. Some people are just not as connected as they maybe, that you weren't even putting a name on it. It was just what you did, right?
You just did
your father with your husband, or with, if you had people in your life, that's what it was. So one of the things we were saying was we wanted to sort of highlight the value of that and just making your life available to somebody who needs you. And maybe especially a younger mom or somebody who's walking through something for the first time or in the early years. So,
and I think that we don't even realize that we're doing it mostly. Especially at this day and age, everything is so internet, okay? We're on the internet right now.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But there's not nearly the connection that there was in the earlier generations. I mean, I remember the lady that was what I would call my first real mentor, other than my grandmother and my mother. My grandmother was one of those people that would listen to everybody. She was a real empathetic kind of person, but very strong and very spiritual.
Nice.
And so she'd never miss the opportunity to put in a word for the Lord. But she was a strong person, and yet she was so kind and so empathetic. And many of my friends even liked her. And they didn't know her. You know what I mean? It was kind of right. And so I think that, in that generation, we spent more time with different generations, and talking or doing things. And today the life is so much more fast-paced.
I agree. That's true.
That it's sometimes hard to think that that's mentoring, But it's a change, and we have to accept the fact that the world keeps moving all the time. And when you think about being a spiritual mentor to someone, I'm not sure that you maybe even know you're doing that at the time. When you think about it in retrospect, you realize, I guess I was a mentor to that person and maybe wasn't even conscious of it. Well, the word mentoring probably stirs up some kind of conjuring that you're this wise sage that knows everything, And in reality, if we think about ourselves, I don't think I'm that at all, In fact, probably a good mentoring situation like Diane and I had it's a learning process between two people.
Sure.
And I probably learned as much from her as she learned from me, but she may not have known that,
Right.
So, well, and I view mentorship as encouragement. And, you've always been that source of encouragement for me, just going through different stages for me, whether my kids have been little or with our business or with just, aging parents, with whatever things that have been going on that to me, when you say what is a mentor or things, I think that is someone that can offer you that encouragement along the way, and sometimes give you those reminders when you may feel overwhelmed or downtrodden or just weary, that we've talked about. And, you can tend to send that card or text message or things like that really does help to uplift.
I've noticed over the years of you talking about what it's meant to you that Ruth would take your call in it.
Oh,
just the availability is I think what I've observed in y'all's relationship is such a big piece of mentorship, is that person that you don't have to feel bad, like I'm bothering them,
Right.
or
Right.
do they want to help me? Do they want to answer another question or hear about what's going on? So just the openness to be willing to listen and to be willing to be there and to take that call when they need it is such an encouragement. Since you do, I think with peers a lot of times, especially a mom in the same stage that you're in, they're in the trenches too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like with us, like, hand me a toddler. I would love to solve that problem. That sounds great. Like, and not that we're belittling doing that, but we've joked about like the way to solve a problem seems pretty straightforward.
Yes.
Probably a nap or a snack is going to solve almost everything going on here.
Yes.
And we would love those things that we're helping our 20-something kids with to be so simple or so straightforward. I will say that when you're exhausted and you have littles, it's hard. But just to have somebody with some perspective to say that your hard is not my hard right now. That's a different kind of hard, and I can come along and be there for you in that.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say that sometimes you think that you need that person and don't know how to find them because of the way that our lives are today, that everything is so much more fast-paced. Now, for instance, in the MOPS ministry, we met monthly or sometimes more than that in the beginning. Yeah. And so you were at a table with people that you maybe didn't even know, but somehow you make a connection.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's something about a mentor you have to be able to connect with this person.
Sure.
And there are times that you might be thinking that somebody, I'd really like them to mentor me. And you realize that if you ever have any real close time together, there's no chemistry
no connection,
here.
Right.
No,
It's not
there's
an
nothing
easy, natural.
a commonality. There's not something. Yeah. Well, share a little bit more about a mentor that you had, because I know you mentioned your grandmother, your mother, and then were
who
there
invested
other people?
in you before you were doing that for Diane?
Lots of people, to be honest. I was thinking about that when you asked me to do this, because it made me really go back and try to think about who all it was. The first one that I remember the most was probably during my teenage years, about the time I learned to drive, when I could really take myself someplace. We had a wonderful young minister and his wife, but she had 5 children.
Wow.
And so, she was pretty well homebound. But I loved her just from perspective, distance, and I thought, I'd run over to Wilma Jean's, what's her name, and her house was always a disaster. There was laundry on the couch. There was, dishes in the sink, and but she was so kind and sweet, and she would take time to sit down with me. And probably a teenager is going to ask somebody other than their mother the hard things of life.
Yes.
And so, if you really can encourage your kids to have that person, it's a godsend.
Yes. Yeah.
And she was that to me. I would tell her stuff I would have never told my mother.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So in the process of that, I watched her life, because I knew her for a good many years. And even after they moved, I stayed connected with her.
Oh, nice.
She was always able to just show me somehow that being a mom was a good job.
That's so precious.
It was fun, and she was so supportive of her husband, who was hardly ever there because he was in the ministry.
Sure.
And so I think I learned that from her and didn't even know I was learning it.
Right.
And then I thought, of course, about other people along the way in my life that they're probably more friends than I would at the point in time. I would have thought of them as mentors.
Yeah.
But I guess we have to remember that we're always, in a way, mentoring.
Sure. Discipling, mentoring things. Yeah.
And that was really what we're called to do, because Jesus said, go and make disciples.
That's right.
And we don't think about that in those terms, but that's what we're doing.
Right.
I love that.
And probably in some areas, of your life, maybe you're not needing advice about being a mom, but you might be growing in an area spiritually, or like you said, in business, or in something that somebody can come alongside and say, I can encourage you in this. I've walked through this part, but maybe we're both in this other season. So it's not always an age thing. It's not always a, it's more of just what that is. And
yes, because I have a young woman in my life. I mean, she's older now. Her kids are more grown up. But when we were friends, she was a whole lot younger than me. I should have maybe been the mentor, but I felt like she was mentoring me because she was so deep spiritually.
Wow.
So much further along than I thought I was at that age. And she was like 30 or something. And she could always point to some verse or encouragement that would be helpful.
Love that.
And it was like, it seemed backwards maybe.
Yeah.
Well, but
it doesn't matter.
Well, I think something that's always been very impressed upon me for you as well is that you've been a constant, in the world that changes all the time, whether it's life is crazy, there's things going on in the world, different things that are happening. You've always been a constant. And I think sometimes we underestimate the value of that and how that
providing continuity over
continuity
your life.
And we've spent a lot of years together, and just seeing the kids grow up. You've come to my graduation parties, the kids' birthdays, different things, and it's been a joy to have that relationship. But I think that's that constant. A lot of people will invest for a season in someone, and so it is. Sometimes people don't realize that constant investment is really invaluable,
right?
It's
and we wanted to honor you in that today. One of the reasons that, like I said, mine was secondhand a little bit, but just to see that modeled and to see that, and like you said, it was just the overflow. It was the natural, a natural connection that y'all had, that you weren't like, I need to mentor Diane. It wasn't like this more overly stressed out, kind of thing. And I love the story about the mom of that. I'm thinking about, all the things that we talk about with motherhood and with running your home and supporting husbands and encouraging each other. And Diane has shared, have people over even when your house is not perfect. And here's the example. Here's the testimony. So that looking back on that, and that you would mark that as such a key person who invested in you and told you, you can be a joyful mom even when your house isn't perfect, right? Which is huge.
Because hers never was.
Well, you think about the anxiety and the stress that a lot of moms express now of that perfectionism pressure that they feel. And to say, we're not making this up. We're not trying to sell you on something. This is possible. This is the power of God working in a mom with 5 littles, with laundry piled up.
One of our funnest MOPS themes was a year that was called A Beautiful Mess. It was, it was kind of, they even encouraged us to take messy pictures, share things, because it was kind of getting yourself out of that perfectionism mode and thinking that. I know for all the years that we would do our steering team meetings, and we would have them at our mentor moms' houses. And Ruth was one of our mentor moms, and another friend, Barbara Bowden, was as well. And we would go to your homes, and it was just calm and peace. And there's no little kids thing. There's no little toys anywhere. And none of us ever wanted to leave.
It's like a treat to go out of the house.
We're
going to someone's house with no toys.
And you guys would always say to us every time, you'd be like, one day you will miss the noise. One day you will miss the chatter and the noise and the toys you trip over and all of that. And it's like, they're so right.
Now you know.
Yes, now you know. I know. For all of our friends out there that have littles, it does pass really quickly. I know we say this too much, and people probably get tired of it.
But it is the reason these themes are coming up. We've done interviews now for this whole season, and y'all are not coordinating with each other. But what they're sharing has some themes to it, because it's universal to motherhood.
It's motherhood.
And you're growing as your kids are growing. And so it's like each of those things. We just have we're going to have a whole other episode, a whole other conversation. And I just wanted to touch on this as a little teaser to have them watch the next episode, because what we've basically been talking about is Titus 2. Correct. So that whole concept that we didn't make it up. It makes sense. Like in common sense world, it makes sense that as a parent, you're teaching your children, or as a mother, you're teaching younger mothers or your younger sisters or your friends from church or something. But it's a biblical concept that was left for us as a model in that. And so that's a little teaser. We're going to go, our next conversation episode. is a deep dive in Titus 2 in that. So if you have any questions for Ruth, or if you have anything you want to share with us of what Titus 2 means to you, I just wanted to let you close on that and just share, anything that you've had on your heart that you wanted to share with the well-grounded mamas.
I think that the proverb that says is iron sharpens iron is a very strong case for mentorship. Yes. In the terms that we do sharpen each other. The more time that we are able to relate to each other, the better the sharing. Yeah. That's right. And so, if you're thinking about somebody that you want to be your mentor, I would say, you want to look for someone as a spiritual mentor who you know prays. Who is biblically sound in terms of the concept that you are raised in, and that will be available. And by available, I don't mean that, all the time you want to talk to them and, you have all these extra hours and stuff. You don't. No. Right. But it's done here and there and everywhere, I guess, so to speak. Yeah. Right. And that you understand that it is a connection, and sometimes it's for a long time, like Diane and mine has been. Sometimes it's a very short time. Right. I remember a couple girls that I suppose they think I was their mentor, and it was really short. Yeah, which is true. Yeah, I think that's true.
But it could have a key. It's a timing for them.
Yes, it's a special blessing when it's a long term. Yeah, but some of that happens geographically. People move, and the relationship changes, and all of those things. So, but if you're looking for growth in your own life, you need to find someone that is sound.
Yeah, I agree. That's
a great list.
Yes.
That is a great list.
We're going to write that down.
We are going to write that down. All right. I love that. Yeah. And I love that because it does, in what you mentioned about having that click. Yeah. And not forcing it. No, if it's not working, God still has someone for you. Sure. You don't have to be hurt and disappointed that particular one didn't click. Keep praying, keep seeking. And it's always the same. It's, pray first. Yes. Pray, seek, and then ask. Sometimes we don't get things because we don't ask the person. We don't ask them. And maybe the answer will strictly be a shock to that person. And they'll say, I don't know how to do this, or whatever. But more than likely, the best thing is to just say, could we just go out to lunch or have coffee or something? And, make a friendship. Right. Most mentoring, I'm sure, is done through friendship. Right. Or if it isn't, it becomes a friendship. Right. That's so good.
Well, for all the times that we've shared lunch and coffee and tea at our mother's tea and ladies' tea days and just those spiritual conversations, I do want to say thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So good.
Isn't that a Chick-fil-A thing?
My pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
Yes. Good. And you are a raving fan, I'll have to say. Definitely. Good
I'm so
stuff.
Glad I was here for this.
Yes. Sisterhood of motherhood.
This is amazing. There's so much insight, so much wisdom there.
Episodes, the months that we've kind of cultivated with all of this, it is amazing to see how God has just orchestrated that common thread of community and caring and just, the joy of the Lord, through all of it. And so we are very blessed
grateful for your time.
Well, thank you.
Coming
it's my
and doing
pleasure,
this
for sure.
And doing stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit to be
Yes.
on a podcast. You did it. You did amazing.
In every episode, we want to end with our verse that we've used for Sisterhood of Motherhood, and that comes from Hebrews 10:24 and 25. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. And we just believe that wholeheartedly that is what the Lord instructs us to do, is to just be a part of each other's lives and to lift up and encourage one another. So
it's amazing. This wasn't even planned. God gave us this verse, and then it's just applied on so many levels to all these conversations because of just that showing up, meeting together, and doing that. And great insight on mentoring, y'all. We're going to need to watch
Stay
this one
tuned
more than
for
once.
the next one, and you'll hear some more in our deep dive and things. But in the meantime, be refreshed, be encouraged, and stay well grounded.